Okay, so the point of this video was I wanted to I wanted to make like a cheat sheet of all of the Dutch patterns and links and weird rules that I wish someone had told me when I was first beginning. And I think after all of the movies and the TV shows and the podcasts and the books that I've read and all of the time that it takes for your brain to start making connections between English and Dutch, I just want to give you those connections and those patterns and things that I've picked up along the way in one simple video that you guys can watch again, slow down, share with people that are also learning Dutch. So here it is. Here are all the bits and pieces that I want to pass on to you guys. I'm going to try and pack as much as I can into this video. If I've forgotten anything, if you have any questions, if you've got any answers, if you are a Dutch person and there's something that I've gotten wrong, let me know in the comments, ask your questions in the comments, and I will do my best to try and get back to you. These are the best ways that I can explain it. So I hope that these things help you out and help speed up the process in getting you sounding a little bit more natural and confident when you're speaking Dutch. So the first things I want to touch on are really just little things that I think will help you sound a little more Dutch. And I did like a whole video on it, but I think it's a little outdated, and I wanted to touch on some of these sounds and things that you can start implementing basically straight away to make you sound a little less formal and a little less bookish. So the first things first is the sound. So things like ugh. These are things that you're going to hear a lot. They're fillers. We have them in English, and we almost have exactly the same version in English. So take something like In English, we say In Dutch, you say So you almost push the bottom half of your jaw out. And that's kind of more of a natural way of saying kind of throws the sentence off a little bit, and it pulls your brain back into like English world. So if you can start implementing these sounds, the other one, ugh, it's like you disagree with something, ugh. We have that in English, and this is a good way to practice your ge. It's like that moment you have in English when you're like, ugh, when you're really disgusted by something. That g sound that you get at the end is the same as the g that you're trying to practice in Dutch. So that's a good way to practice your g sounds, but making that ugh, ach, ja, that's a really common Dutch thing, a Dutch filler sound to make. When you're pausing or thinking in a Dutch sentence or in Dutch conversation, you tend to stop and just yeah. Nay. So we also have this one in English. So just start finding these patterns, start listening to your own language, listening to how we use English and how does that connect to Dutch. That's like when you're doubting something or you don't believe something or you're shocked. So and it starts a little bit deeper. I think the English version is when we say huh. So and huh. So Dutch, again, you're sticking that bottom half of your jaw out, and that's how you're making that deeper, surprised sound. So this next quick tip is the Dutch love to talk and use the present perfect. Now, before you like get really confused and think, oh, I don't know what past continuous, present continuous, past simple, all of that. I didn't either. I literally had to look it up to make sure that I was using the right word to describe this. So I'm better off just explaining this in examples. In English, we would say I saw, I bought, and I cooked. I cooked. And that's a really common way to express those things. I cooked yesterday, or I cooked dinner, or I bought a car, I saw it, I saw that movie. In Dutch, it's really common to use the sentence pattern ik heb, and then you use the past participle ge to say that something was already done. So Again, let me just give you an example. Ik heb gekookt. Ik heb het gezien. Ik heb het gekocht. Of ik heb avondeten gekookt. So now that you recognize that when people use ik heb, chances are they're actually going to refer to something in the past that already happened. So this is a really good way to sort of start understanding the context of the sentence that someone's going to say before you hear the end. You already know that the action is going to be something that they've already done. So ik heb, and then the past participle. So this is a far more natural way to express the past in Dutch. I think if you can really get your English head around it and start using ik heb as a construct to talk about the past, then you'll sound a lot more assimilated and a lot more natural, rather than just sound like you're translating English into Dutch, which is technically what you're doing. But I think if you can recognize this pattern, and I wish someone had told me, no, we don't really say it like that. We just say ik heb, and then you change the verb to the past. It's a far better way to explain yourself, and you'll recognize this pattern a lot more when you're listening to other Dutch speakers speak Dutch. 2 words that you will hear all the time in Dutch that don't actually really mean that much is maar and gewoon. Gewoon, I think, is translated as just, but it means it has so many more functions than how we use the word just in English. So gewoon is almost like just because, and gewoon is also like saying simply or generally sometimes. So if someone was to ask you, waarom deed je dat? You could just answer gewoon, just because. Or you would say it was so funny, but you'd say it was gewoon lachen. It was just funny. So gewoon is definitely a word that you'll hear a lot. Maar is translated as but it's also like you use it when you're introducing a new topic, or you disagree with something that someone else has said. So you would say, yeah, maar, and then you present your argument. So you'll have to keep an ear out for these ones. They aren't used in written text as much because written text tends to be more formal. So maar and gewoon are very casual ways of speaking and something that you'll hear just in general conversation. So listen out for them and know that they don't have a specific meaning themselves, but they kind of are ways of introducing other topics. If that makes any sense, just listen for them in conversation and you'll start to really learn the context of how they're used and when to use them yourself. So in English, we say the word actually a lot. And actually in Dutch isn't actueel, as you might think it is. Actually in Dutch is said as echt. So echt, you can ask it on someone if you can ask it on someone. That was so Dutch. Echt is like when someone says something that you don't believe, and you could be like, yeah, but actually, did that actually happen? You would say, ja, maar echt? Heeft het echt gebeurd? Maar echt? Yeah, I actually think that. Ja, maar ik denk het echt. So don't confuse actueel and echt. They don't mean the same thing. Okay, so this next little section, I wanted to bring together all the prefixes and suffixes of English and kind of find their link to Dutch. And this really helped me when I was trying to learn new words, and I thought if I could just have a direct link, then you would basically learn a whole bunch of new words that you could make up on the fly because you knew how they were said in English and how to make them in English. So try and transfer those rules. It doesn't always work. And I will say that at the beginning, this isn't 100% foolproof. This rule does not always work. Some words are complete exceptions to the rule, and the same rules that apply in English can't always apply in Dutch because they're 2 separate languages. But there are a lot of crossovers, so let's break them down. I have broken some of these down in a previous video, but let me just pop up a table here so you can see all of the links and their English equivalents. If you want to pause it, you can copy down this table and write them all out, and I'm going to go through and give you some examples of them. So let's start from the start. Full in Dutch is like when we use full in English. So full and full. So things like successful, hopeful, respectful. These things are almost basically the same in Dutch. So you've got successful, smaakvol, respectful, and hopeful. So the next one is ge at the start of the word is like when we add an ed in English to the end of a verb when it's already been done. So I work would be like I'm doing it. I worked, which means it's done. So it's in the past. This in Dutch is ik heb gewerkt. So you can see that ed becoming the ge in Dutch. So when you say ge before a verb, you can assume that it's already happened, that it means that it's already happened in the past. There are exceptions to this, things like gebruiken, where there is just a ge at the start of the verb, and that just doesn't mean that it happened in the past. It can still happen now. But as a general rule, if you see ge, or you want to put ge in front of a verb, that means it's already done. So I have cooked, ik heb gekookt. I have seen, ik heb het gezien. Do you see what I mean? Can you see how that works? So the ed and the ge are linking together. So this next one, again, doesn't always work, but when you see the word heid on the end of a verb, it's almost like how we use nurse in English, so the NESS. So it's kind of like describing the state of something. So gelukkigheid is like happiness. On before a verb is the same as an in English. So this is pretty self-explanatory. Gelukkig and ongelukkig. So you've got that happy and then it means the opposite, so unhappy. Ongelukkig. Los on the end of a Dutch word is less. So if you wanted to quickly translate some English words that end in less, you could think, okay, well, less is usually los in Dutch, so you just can make them up on the spot. Hulploos, krachteloos, uitzichtloos. So it's just meaning without. Achtig and ugh are like adding a y to the end of something. So you've got achtig is more when you say it's like that, and ich is more like the y. So you've got something that's kinderachtig, which means it's childlike. In English we would say childish, but in Dutch you say childlike. And it still kind of does make sense in English, so you can see how these rules aren't foolproof, but you can kind of start understanding how these words are formed and what the suffixes and prefixes mean. And on the end of a word usually is used when you're describing someone's nationality. So you would say like Amerikaan, Brazilian, Afrikaan, similar to how we use en in English. R is like the person that does that thing. So you've got tekenaar, kunstenaar, leraar. So they're the person that does that thing or that action. Similar to how we use er. So you would have teacher. So that's kind of when you use that suffix, when you add it to the end of the person who does that action. Lastly is b. So b is usually used when you want to do that action to something or someone. For instance, schrijven is to write, but beschrijven is to describe or to write on something. Het water of bewateren. So like to water the garden, as in it's a verb, but het water is a noun. Kijken is just to look in a general sense, whereas bekijken is to look at something. Antwoord and beantwoorden. So ik antwoord of ik ga haar beantwoorden. I'm going to answer her. So you can see that the be kind of carries on the similar sort of meaning to the original verb, but it means that you're like doing something with it. Okay, I've spoken about this before. I hate Dutch articles. I hate them. If every language could just be like English and have the and then the rest just flows on from there, I would be so happy. De and het are literally the bane of my existence. I still get them wrong all the time, and I feel like I should have learned them earlier when I was learning Dutch. I've talked about this in another video about why Dutch is a real pain in the butt, but I want to have all of these tips in a single video, so I'm going to go over them really quickly again. De and het change the word that comes before a noun. So only nouns can have de and het. Say het huis. Het huis becomes ons huis, which also becomes mooi huis. Fiets is de fiets. Onze fiets and mooie fiets. So you just have to add an E onto our or onto the adjective that's describing the noun. The other little confusing part that comes into it is that diminutives, so when you add the ch on the end, this is always het. Always het. If it was a het word, it stays het, and if it was a de word, it turns into het. The only thing that trumps this rule is plurals. So even if a word is a diminutive, if there's more than one small thing, it then changes back to de, always. If you're unsure, I think slightly more words are actually de. So if you have to guess, then just guess de, but always ask. Because it doesn't change how someone will understand you, it doesn't change the meaning of the word, and it doesn't change the concept of what you're trying to say, people are less likely to correct you because they still get what you're trying to say. So I have learnt a lot of bad habits and a lot of de and hets in the wrong order because no one ever bothered to correct me because it didn't change the meaning of what I was saying. So if you're unsure and you guess, just follow it up with a question. Just say, is het wel de of het? It's super, super simple, and you can start making sure that you do not learn bad habits because it's easy to do when no one wants to take the time to correct you all the time. So just ask. Now there's probably heaps more links and patterns and things. If you guys have found any, I would love to see them and read them. So leave them in the comments below, and then other people who are learning Dutch can hopefully read the comments too. This is kind of the simplest way I can express how like my English brain has tried to make connections with Dutch. So some of them, like I've said before, the rules aren't 100% foolproof. There are some sort of exceptions. If there's any major mistakes, anyone who's Dutch who's watching, please let us know in the comments below. There's always links and other YouTube videos and channels that are really good at learning Dutch, and I always leave them in the description box. So that is it from me this week, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.